This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm calling to order the meeting of the Cost Efficiencies Committee for March 10th at around 3:32. So far, we have 4 of our members, Janet Kane, Ian Illingsworth, Bradley Oxon, and myself, and we're expecting Ed Gibson, and that would make a quorum for us. At this point in time, Aliza and Bob Riggs have indicated that they can't be here today, and I haven't heard from John or from Vicky, but I know Vicky is always challenged to be able to come at work time, so I haven't really been expecting her. And we have our town treasurer, Jen Day, who's here, partly to sit in and hear what we're doing and maybe answer some questions if we have any questions of her. So with that, I'm going to get going. I don't see any other members of the public here, and let's do the very first thing, which is just to look at the minutes from last meeting. I sent those around a few days ago, which maybe people had a chance to look at, and you've also seen, or you had access anyway, to the YouTube video that's up on our website, which was kind of informative, I think. We got through a few things, although it's a bit of a challenge to try and figure out all the things we're trying to do here. But let's just see if I can scroll down on these minutes. And thanks to Judy for transcribing these from the YouTube. So basically, we had everybody here last time except for Vicky and John, and our last meeting was on February 17th. We approved the last set of minutes, and then we kept going on the old business on trying to look at ways to enhance revenue and cost savings. And let's see, is there anything? Let me run down here. So I think we did talk about a fair amount about personal property taxes here. And we'll probably pick that up again this afternoon. We got clarity in terms of how people get registered to do business in town and how we know that there are businesses and how that all works. Oops, sorry. Ian, I think, sorry. Ian had talked to us a little bit about the police detail and cruiser fees, and we understand that that has already pretty much been maxed out. There's nothing more that we can really do there to enhance our revenue stream from that angle. And similarly, Ian reported to us that John had recently modified the ambulance fees. So those two look like those avenues of potential revenue enhancement don't seem to quite be there. We did talk quite a bit about leasing, or sort of a lease financing on vehicles, especially for police and highway and school. And Ian and Bob's had talked a little bit about that. There is some further work, I think, to be done on that in terms of the various insurance carriage, et cetera, among other things there. Replacing streetlights. We know Ed had mentioned that this is something that could be useful, but it's definitely going to be a cost to buy out Eversource, and I don't think we had any information at that point in time. Central purchasing of supplies. Bradley had reported on that in terms of how we could better monitor the money being spent, order in bulk and maybe get better discounts. There were some cons to that in terms of maybe some slow processing. And then Ed had mentioned that we would have to have any kind of storage available for any kind of bulk purchase. And here comes Ed. And then lastly, I think we were down to some shared maintenance plans about especially the HVAC for Norris and how that would maybe tie in with other town buildings if it was cheaper to have one contract for maintenance rather than separate contracts. And I think that was kind of it. So if anybody has any questions or comments, anything you see that needs changing, feel free to ask or share. And if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes for the February 17th time.
I'll move, Janet.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second, Ian Illingsworth.
Okay, And could I have a roll call vote? I think we have a quorum now. Roll call, please. All those in favor?
Jane, I.
Okay.
Aye, Ian Whisper.
All right.
Bradley, aye.
Okay. Ed, are you?
Gibson, aye.
Okay. And Fowles, aye. Okay. Thank you. Minutes are approved. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. All righty. So we wanted to see if we can make some headway today on some of the assignments that we had started talking about last time, some of those same issues, and see if we have any other level of detail. And I'm going to just pull up another list just to refresh our brain on some of these things here. Where was it? Okay, right here. So I'll just jump down to one. Eliza can't be here today, but she did come back to me with some information about her task, which was shared maintenance on contracts for things like HVAC and boiler. And so this is what she's reported back. So currently BG Mechanical has 2 preventive maintenance plans in place, one with Norris and one with Town Hall. They've done maintenance and repair work with the library and police station in the past. And she's apparently spoken to the manager of operations and asked him if we were to include other buildings, would there be any savings? Because Norris and Town Hall have preventive maintenance contracts in place, they appreciate a drop at the hourly service rate, apparently by 6%. If other buildings had maintenance contracts, they would also get the 6% decrease in hourly service. And because they would be lumped together under one town agreement, he might be able to lower the hourly cost by 8%. BG is has a contract with Division of Capital Asset Management Maintenance by the state for any contracts or projects under $50,000. That would allow them to give us an estimate for all the locations without having to go out to bid. So that is at least some useful information in terms of what we know. I don't know if anybody has some thoughts or comments about that in terms of what we currently have in place. So we have it apparently for the Town Hall, from what I'm understanding, and Norris in terms of preventive maintenance plans in place. But is there any thoughts from other sources? We don't have anybody from the library here. I forget who's representing the library cluster amongst you all. Is there anybody?
I am.
Oh, okay. So they wouldn't have even known this. I just got this from Eliza today. But does anybody have any thoughts? Ed, you might be at least the first person, and then Ian, if this makes any sense or thought to pursue a little bit further on this idea.
Well, the one that would naturally come to mind would be the police departments use BG Mechanical, but just doesn't have a service contract with them. So it's gonna save 6% on the rate. Might be, you know, worthwhile even to look at in that particular caveat.
Yeah. So Ian, right now, do you just, when there's a problem, you just kind of call as is, or what
That's
happens?
correct. Yeah. Whenever there's a problem, we call as is.
Okay. All right. And I assume, Ed, that the library probably does the same thing.
The library has a different contractor.
Ah, okay. Okay. All right. So that might be a task. And Bradley, just because you're on the library cluster there, maybe just to check with Barbara as to who that vendor is and what that arrangement is all about. If they have a preventive maintenance contract in place, or if they are kind of a little bit ad hoc and just, you know, calling up for services as they need, and whether or not, you know, what their cost is per year, I guess. I imagine you could find that out already from their expense accounts. But would be curious to see if there's something else that we could maybe incorporate in there. Is there any other department that would possibly need to be included that isn't currently under any kind of contract here?
What's the deal with the highway department and the water commissioner's building? Do we know? I can find out from the water commissioners what their
I can find out from the highway rather. I don't know what highway has,
Yeah.
or the fire department. I'll check with both of them.
Okay, so if we could do that, then, and come back on our next meeting with that information, that might be useful. So again, I would say, who are they using? Maybe if we have an idea of, well, whether they have any kind of contract in place, and what their costs maybe have been over the last year or so, or what the cost of if they don't have a contract, what has been their expenses for these kinds of services, and maybe whether or not it would be sensible to have some kind of a contract. If there was a town contract, the way I'm understanding this is that we might be able to get it down even by 8% on an hourly cost. So hard to know percentage wise what that really means in real dollars, but at least there seems to be an openness there on the part of BG Mechanical. Okay. Any?
Yep. Does Ian have any idea how much you spend annually on the service, Ian? Probably not off the top of your head.
You know what? I can tell you last year, we have had no mechanical issues this year. I will, we're slated to through capital to get some boilers this year. It should be happening. So last year with our I think maybe a couple $100 last year, maybe $500 at the most, I would say. And but we haven't had any problems this fiscal year as of yet.
Okay. All right. And then Ed, I don't know if you might have a clue in terms of what the contract is in place that we have at Town Hall for BG Mechanical. Is that thousands? Hundreds or thousands?
Thousands.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, we have a quarterly service contract in place with them, which is like, if my memory is correct, about $6,400 a year. And I was actually looking for fiscal year 23 to get a quote from them to reinstitute our control contract with them.
Okay. And this is just for boilers, is it?
No, it's our entire HVAC system.
Okay. All right. That's what I was thinking. Okay. All right. So that's so $6,400 a year is what you said, right?
For the HVAC portion. I can't remember. We discontinued the control portion a couple of years ago because they actually had skipped us they had a change in personnel and had skipped us in the last year, that contract. So we hadn't renewed it, but I'm looking to get a new estimate out of them to think about instituting it again for fiscal year 23.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can gather some further detailed information in terms of what it might be at different other parts of the town facilities, and whether this might make sense to do more of a group contract, at least for preventive maintenance on HVAC and or boiler kinds of things. Okay, great. All right. So that's the only one that I had heard back in ahead of time because she wasn't going to be here. I don't have anything on the common IT support. I think that was John. And then we can go back up. I don't know, Bradley, are you able to talk a bit about this approved vendor list for supplies, or wherever you'd like to begin? I know you were working on various spreadsheets.
Oh, if you want me to talk about central purchasing of the office supplies, I can talk about that.
Do you want to, I'll let you, if I can, let me just stop sharing this because this was just a note here. And I'll let you share the screen if I can do that, if you need to. People can share
My
screen.
screen.
Yeah.
Not what I need to share.
Okay, if you don't need to, but it's available if anybody has something they want to share. But go ahead and just talk us through what you're finding.
All right, so recently I've emailed all the department heads about their top 10 most ordered office supplies and the top 10 vendors that they purchased from. I got about 4 or 5 responses, and it seems like the most common supply that people are purchasing for their own department is printer ink or toner. And then there's some paper, there's toilet paper, tissue paper, things that are miscellaneous things, and then there's department-specific items such as library tape, construction paper, tax bill paper for the treasurer, the office. And so there's really the main common factor is printer, ink, and toner. And vendors, there's WB Mason, Amazon, Richco Products, Rodart, Staples, Quill, Point, Arthur Jones. So WB Mason and Amazon was the most common for the responses for vendors. I'm really only seeing printer, ink, and toner as something that we can look into and see what everyone has and who they have a contract with and how much they're paying. I think that's one thing I can focus in on.
Now, what kind of complications do we have in terms of departments having different equipment that won't allow for maybe some consolidated purchase of the same brand of something? Is that a problem, or?
It might be if we have different brands of printers and they need different types of inks or toners. Yes, that could be a problem. We would have to get everyone the same type of printer in that scenario.
Yeah. So maybe we need to understand who has what kind of printer, I guess, to sort of do a mini inventory, I guess I would say. I don't know, unless we have that listed somewhere else already, to get a sense of what that means, and then, you know, dig a little bit deeper to say, okay, you know, Department X, you know, they're spending this amount and they have the same kind of printer as Department Y, and you know, does it make sense to try and consolidate and get a, even if it's not one bulk order, does it make sense to get, you know, if there were 2 or 3 similar printers, would it make sense to get, you know, 2 or 3 mini orders that are bulk orders? I don't know. I'm just trying to react to what you said there. Anybody have some thoughts or questions there?
I would venture to guess everyone has different printers.
Yeah,
Some are very old, some are new.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
age may affect that too,
Yeah.
you know?
well, yeah, and what happens is printers die or whatever. You end up usually, even if you tried to replace it with what you had, it was probably at end of generation. So if you're doing them at different times, you're going to end up with probably not even the same thing being available.
Okay. And do we have, so right now we kind of purchase a printer as we need it. So we haven't, unlike the laptops we did for town hall under the CARES Act, we don't have kind of a, you know, every 3 years, whatever, we're going to replace the printers at town hall or in the departments, right? We don't have anything like that in place in terms of a system, right?
No, we do not.
When they die, we replace them, at least at the PD side.
Yeah, okay. So question, I guess, would it make sense to have something like that, just to say that this is, you know, normal wear and tear at the end of 3 years, these are kind of disposable items, if you will, and that, you know, printers should be replaced. You know, maybe it becomes a policy question rather than anything immediate, I don't know, but it's just throwing it out there. Is that something that would help us in the future, to have more like equipment?
Or maybe some IT policies that we might be able to undertake to kind of consolidate that process a little bit and kind of constrain it. So perhaps there are less different varieties that are out there. Okay. But, you know, I mean, it depends on what people have. It's like, okay, what Judy and I probably have what I would call maybe a upper lower end, you know, printer, which might last 3 to 5 years. So, some of the desktops that are, you know, desktop units I've seen around here, the inkjets, geez, you might only get 1 to 3 out of them. Then we've got some workhorses that, you know, should last, you know, 5 years or longer that are in here.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you're right. It may lend itself to more policy definition anyway, in terms of what, you know, what's minimum in terms of, you know, what we need to have as the common printers for anybody to use versus individual desk or individual office printers or something like that. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, so not much we can do on that right now, but we can certainly be thinking about policy. We can take a look though to understand what we have, Bradley, I think for commonality of printers, if we have a way to get a sense of who has what and
And for
what
how
ink-
long, I think maybe
yeah,
too.
yeah,
For How
yeah,
long?
yeah. So how old it is that what you mean, Janet?
Yeah,
Yeah. Or, and what kind of, what kind of toner and ink do they use now? So we could have a sense if there's any commonality there. I mean, it may not be big bucks, but maybe there's a little bit of savings that could be had, even if there were, 2 or 3 offices that happen to have the same printer, that at least no matter what the age, it might still be using the same kind of ink and toner, but who knows? So that would be a further discussion. Yeah. Yeah, Jen? Yeah.
I'm just saying, I'm thinking of like the different offices and the printers they have. And I don't really think there's any similarities in printers whatsoever.
Yeah.
They're all different. And I know for me, like mine, to print the bills and then to print payroll checks, I mean, I need to make sure that I always have ink on hand and I'm more comfortable, like, being responsible for that myself than
Mhm.
to not have it, I
Mhm.
guess. I mean,
Yeah.
and like our printers, 2 of them, and the one that does the payroll checks, that's rather new, right? You just got that. And then the one that prints the bills is only a couple years old. But then the one in my office is from like 2010 and it still works fine. So
Well, there you go.
it's just all different. And even these 3 are all different. Like and I just, I know the
Yeah.
Board of Health has a printer and she has colored ink, and there's just,
Mhm.
I don't think there's any similarities, but.
Okay, well, maybe there's room to take a look at that, going forward anyway, in terms of a little
Yeah.
bit more commonality. Because I think that to the notion that, any kind of a bulk purchase could be maybe cost savings, that would be something at least to look into a little bit further. So beyond the toner and ink, Bradley, was paper another big one? I would think that most people are using the same vendor for paper. Is that not true?
Yeah, I believe paper would be necessary, but currently we would go, like I've gone to the break room and I believe Ed or the town hall purchases those big stacks of paper and we take one when we need them.
Yeah,
So that's kind
okay.
of central purchased already.
I see.
If
Okay.
everyone else is doing the same. I hope I'm not the only one.
Okay.
They're not.
So some of the other, though, like you mentioned, sorry, was it the town clerk that needed special paper for something?
Jen
treasurer.
in the treasurer's office.
Or treasurer's
she
office,
has
okay.
special things.
Okay, for certain.
Library has special things. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Ed, can you sort of fill us in on that? Is that something that we could do better on, or is that working okay the way it is? I mean, if it's not broken, I don't want to fix anything. I'm just trying to highlight anything that could be helpful to, get maybe a little bit of cost savings or,
Well,
underneath on it.
the cost savings in paper becomes, not just buying centrally for town hall, but for maybe all the departments, including the school. But once you do that, you also, if you're looking for the cost savings, you need a place to store that. So if you don't have the place to store it, you don't do it, because if you've got to create something, that storage isn't free. And I forget, and this is like a 10-year ago number. I think the average cost of storage 10 years ago was like 75 cents per square foot.
Yeah.
It does add up.
So when you order now, I mean, what level of volume do you get? I mean, what are we able to house now?
We buy 6 boxes at a time, which will, depending on the time of year, will probably on average last us anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks.
Okay. So more or less monthly or at 6 weekly, you're getting another order in anyway, probably almost monthly. Yeah.
Right.
And Ian, is that about the same for you or not?
No, it's less for me. I don't buy in bulk. I kind of just buy a case whenever I need it through WB Mason, because it comes right away and it's the recycled paper we need. But I probably need only a case, which I think is a total of 12 reams, maybe once every 2 months.
Okay, so less frequently, yeah. Okay, all right. Well, I'm not hearing lots and lots of cost savings coming out of central supply purchase here. Okay. Shall we move on to another topic then? Ian, I'm assuming you might not have had any other work with Bob on the vehicle leasing purchase idea, or?
No, I thought we kind of concluded that he didn't feel it was going to be cost savings based on the interest rates,
Okay,
or the finance rates.
the financing rates, okay. Okay. Janet, anything on permitting software? I know you'd worked a little bit with Ron on that, but you may not have looked at costing on that yet.
We hadn't looked at costing yet because I wasn't sure if we were ready to spend more money at this point, so. Making a couple vendors.
What's with the permitting? Because the permitting software was just implemented in July, so.
Right. This was something that Ron had suggested, right? Janet?
Oh,
Yeah.
so so what Ron is suggesting is new software for the whole town that
For sign-offs.
will be integrated. Yeah, so basically it's a whole financial software system, not just for permitting, is what he's thinking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, it's not a
Okay.
permitting software. It's a sign-off process. So it goes from Department A to Department B to Department C.
Which,
without
yeah,
some-
and that
some
goes right
human-
through.
Right.
Instead of having the human touch, move the paper along and.
Right. So there's one thing I think and maybe I'm confused on it, because I know we've been talking about some possibilities for the new financial software system that I know Ed had started looking into, but I thought this was more for things like building plan, whatever, Board of Health, whatever that had to do special permitting on construction related things, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
Do you want me to share his email again? I can
Yeah,
do-
if you could, yeah, sure. Yeah,
Summarize it better. Yep.
that might be helpful.
Okay, so. Can everybody?
Yeah,
I don't need to read.
One platform by all departments.
yeah. So, okay, so
Okay.
this, yeah. Make it just a tad bit bigger, if you can. So assigning the correct fees to permits and licenses. So that's where I thought it was a little bit different than the other financial software that might be more treasurer and accounting related, but
It's really not. It's because Ron was working in the city of Westfield and they use Munis. So Munis was used for their financial software, but you also, departments could check off on building permits in it. Like Munis basically does everything. So he was talking about one integrated software.
But he was referring to opengov.com is kind of what
Yeah.
he was.
so this is something else he was recommending. Okay,
Yeah,
So that's a vendor being used in Amherst, so maybe that one
Yeah.
is,
it is. Yeah.
less
Yeah.
expensive than Munis
Yeah.
per se, but, because that's
Yeah.
what Ron was telling me. I don't know. So,
There are permitting softwares out there that are all encompassing that can actually be integrated into your financial software package.
okay. So I think that's something that we probably want to figure out a way to do more, more of a deep dive into. And I guess I'm not totally sure how to go about that. Any thoughts on that? I mean, it seems like the financial software, and again, Ed, I don't know, I don't want to repeat what you've already started doing, because I know you had some ideas of a couple of potential software systems that would improve on the financial side, but I guess I had thought this was a different thing, but. if
Well,
this
it is, but
Okay.
the first thing is you need to know what you're going to use for a financial software
Okay.
system. So that's the first upgrade. Then after that, or simultaneously with that, you would go out and look at an all integrating licensing permitting program that can be integrated to all the departments, but the requirement is that it must integrate into your financial software package.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
would step two then. And it also talks about I don't know if the Board of Health has weighed in on anything like that, but he's referring to that as well. So.
You can do it for one department, two departments, what have you. It does get interesting because, shall we say, as managers, we want one, so it's all integrated, and yes, you can do the sign-offs for it. What ends up happening when you go through this stuff is you'll get different departments that say, oh, this particular permitting package is the best for health. This permitting package happens to be the best for building, and you end up with these different things. So what you basically have to go out there with the mindset is you're not going to keep everybody happy, but you're going to go out and make a general decision encompassing everybody that, okay, I'm going to make a decision with one of these software packages, and okay, it might have advantages here or there and disadvantages there or there, but overall, what's the best package for everyone?
Okay. So we may be a little bit ahead of the game in terms of partly what Ron was suggesting. And I know, Ed, you had it on your to-do list in terms of some financial software. Is that something, in the next, whatever, 2-3 weeks that you might get around to talking to vendors, or where are things with that, or what would you recommend we do?
Oh, it wouldn't be something that I would talk to vendors by myself. That takes a time commitment to integrate both Jennifer and Bradley in that.
Okay. All right. And you guys have some idea of potential vendors. Obviously, there's a couple sources here.
There's probably two main ones that would probably fit a community this size. One is an upgrade of our SoftWrite program. The other is probably Vadar. So Munis is way too big and way too expensive for us. And then the other programs that are out there are probably, not popular enough to have all the kinks worked out for Massachusetts municipality.
So I do
Okay.
have an estimate from Vadar, because Vicky and I went to a demonstration they did, and then they've come here to town hall also. So I have an estimate for them. So Vadar doesn't have its own payroll module. So they partner with Harper's. So I also did get an estimate for Harper's.
Okay.
So just so you know, so we do have that,
Okay.
but I know Ed wants to meet up with Springbrook.
Okay.
Which is the upgrade for SoftWrite.
And how old are those invoices or estimates rather?
They're not, they're older, but they're in the last year, I believe. So.
Okay. All right. Well, let's put this on a to-do list. I think this is something that we've all kind of talked about from time to time, and the time might be right. Again, we were trying to work out something that would be either revenue enhancing, which we're kind of coming up against a brick wall on, or some cost savings or more efficient, so that we can reduce the redundancy of a lot of manual touching of all sorts of pieces of paper, and have something that we could potentially put forth in this fiscal year, or for this budget season, and or some other source of funding. So if we could make that on our to-do list, I think that would be great. So Ed, I'm going to leave that with you to organize, if that's okay, in terms of any vendors. Okay. All right. The next topic, I think, and I don't know if we got any further on, I think this might be the last one that we have any information on, was the notion about personal property taxes. And I know, Bradley, you had gotten a long list of businesses, I believe, people doing business in town, whether Lucy said it may or may not be up to date. People may have left and not notified us, or there may be other home businesses that are not on that list. And I don't know where we think we are with understanding how complete it is.
Yeah, so Lucy sent me her big file, and there was 185 listings. I don't know if that means 185 licenses to these individuals, and 16 were highlighted to say we're reaching out to them to ask if they want to renew their license. So it's possibly 169-ish without those 16. And I sent them to the assessor's department to ask, have they seen it? Lucy said that she did share it with the assessors. The assessors say they don't have the time to compare it to their list because they don't have their principal assessor with them. Well, yeah, we haven't hired one, but their quick analysis, April, of the assessors department said so, that appears that there are many in-home businesses that would be under that $5,000 threshold that the town voted on.
Mhm.
So we're not going to be able to collect more taxes from them, but they have been working on the bigger businesses in the town to see if we can earn more tax revenue from them.
Mhm. And
Hey-
go ahead, Janet, sorry.
I was
Go
just going to mention that I know that the application went out to a number of small businesses because I got a call from somebody that I did business with asking me, what the heck is this? So unfortunately, there wasn't kind of an explanation with it, but they are filling them out and sending them back. And again, a lot of them are under the 5,000, but they couldn't selectively say, I'm going to target these 10 and not target anybody else. So I think they did a broad mailing to a number of businesses in town that are home-based as well. So
just clarity, who is the one doing the mailing out? Which office does that?
I think it came from the assessor's office, I believe.
Okay.
The assessors, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it was-
Should be.
And is this a yearly renewal that people should know that, like our excise tax and everything else, that it's time?
Every year, every year.
Only if they got it originally. I think a number of them never got it the first time, have never gotten it before.
That's possible.
Um,
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they're receiving it for at least for the first time that they're aware of. So it may be a small business, but that maybe don't qualify, but are resubmitting it back to get it off their plate and make sure that they've responded to it because they weren't clear as kind of what they were receiving. But I definitely did. They're definitely targeting some bigger places that may have been overlooked in the past, from my understanding. But they weren't being selective. They were mailing it out to everybody on the list. So.
Okay,
The forms of list 2 are due on March 1st, I believe.
Yes,
And
that's
other
when-
towns charge a $50 fine for not returning them on time. So it's not a lot of revenue, but it's something, and it automatically gets applied to their third quarter tax bill.
oh,
You want to make sure that they're returning them if they're supposed to be, just because that does affect how much the town collects. Otherwise, if they don't return them, you have to go off the previous year form of list, which isn't always up to date. So, they have that $50 fine there you can do to give businesses incentive to return the form.
So when you say they, you're not necessarily talking about Southampton, other
The
communities.
assessor's office would charge,
Yeah.
so other communities that I've worked for
Yes, but
have
we're
the
not,
$50 fee.
but
I'm
we're not
saying we
saying
could-
that there's not a fee in place at this point in time for Southampton.
There's not, but we could implement that fee. I'm not sure. I think it's just common that assessor's office charge that fee. This is the only town I know of that I've worked at that hasn't.
okay.
So-
So is it fair to say, if I'm understanding this correctly, that out of the 85 or something, that all 185 would have gotten a letter from the assessor's office?
I think it was just a form for
Or
personal.
a form to fill out? Okay, and just out of curiosity, what's the DBA license? The business license cost? Is there one?
I think you mean the certificate from Lucy?
Yeah, sorry, yes, doing business certificate, sorry.
I think that's only like $25,
Mhm, okay.
25 or 50
Annually?
per business. Yeah, annually. Yeah.
Annual. Uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay.
And how does that get collected? That also gets attached to their,
Nope, Lucy collects that when they apply for the certificate.
okay.
Okay. So so once they're registered, though, they pay that annually, no matter what. So they've been registered for 10 years, they should be paying annually or is it a one-time do their license?
I'm not sure on that.
Yeah,
You
we
would
could
have to
just-
ask Lucy.
yeah, we could just.
I
Brad,
believe,
maybe-
I believe DBA is a one-time.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, that would not make sense to do that annually, I don't think, in my head, but anyway,
I-
maybe we could just clarify that. So once you're registered as a business, you pay your fee to get your money to be licensed, and then you're licensed until otherwise notified, I guess. But then the notion of personal property tax, so I'm understanding though that becomes a separate form to be sent out by the assessor's office. People are supposed to return it with their inventory of sorts, and the value, right, of what they think their value is, or what they purchased it at, or the depreciated value or something, of whatever that equipment is. But then anything that is under $5,000 has been voted by the town already to be exempt from personal property tax. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
Okay, so anything above the 5,000 should be collectible. And what Jen has said is that other towns require that form to be filled in, whether you're under the limit or not, right? The form should be returned, and if not, you may pay
I
a
would think
fine?
if once you're exempt, unless something changes.
Yeah,
once you're exempt, you're exempt. Okay,
yeah, not if you're under the limit, but you know,
Okay.
if you're over the limit and say you're, you know, a construction business and you don't send in your new form and you get 2 new trucks that year or whatever, you know.
Because
I
trucks
don't know,
don't
it's a lot
apply.
of,
Trucks
okay,
get
well, trucks
excise
don't
tax,
apply,
yeah.
but whatever, if you get 2 new pieces of equipment or, you know,
Yeah.
whatnot, it does definitely change what you're going to be charged in property taxes if that business is growing and they're,
right,
Personal-
that's why towns charge that
Yeah.
fee to make sure that everything's up to date.
gotcha. So I guess one thing maybe I'm just missing a point here, but Bradley, you mentioned that there were some that were highlighted, so 16 or so that they're reaching out to. So does that mean that those would be ones that are most likely not exempt, right? Or they're ones that they have on their list, but that need to turn in their form because they are over the $5,000 limit, or we don't know that?
What Lucy said was she had 16, well, she had questions for the ones that were highlighted on the file, and she was gonna ask if they're renewal, like, I don't know who was asking, but someone's trying to ask them if they're renewing or if they're discontinued.
Mm.
So there's some type of reaching out going on of, are you still an active business in Southampton?
Okay, but we still don't know whether we've gotten. I guess I wonder if there's a way to and I guess the assessors don't have the manpower to do it, but I was going to suggest if there was a way on that list to know which ones are already exempt, you know, out of the 185, you know, are 125 exempt, and we don't really worry about them, and or are there, you know, 60 that are potentially large enough to be considered for paying their personal property tax. Is there a way to figure that out without? I don't know what records are being kept, so I guess I don't know whether that's a reality. You know, again, we were just looking to make sure that we're not missing any revenue, right? I mean, it's not necessarily putting in a new fee, although some towns apparently do that, but we're not recommending that at this point in time. But we wanted to be sure that we were not missing revenue from businesses that would qualify to pay their bill.
A new fee is new revenue and it ensures that businesses are returning the form, you know, or
Yeah.
otherwise they have to pay that fee.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know, just-
Yeah. Okay. And just to clarify one thing, Jen, in terms of how what gets added to the property tax, you were saying? If they,
The
that,
$50 fine would get added to the next fiscal year's real estate tax third quarter bill, so the February payment.
I see. Okay. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts there? Is this something worth pursuing further? Is it, you know, we were trying to identify things that were kind of the low hanging fruit to see if we could, you know, get any other sources of income or do whatever we're trying to do here with improving efficiencies. But if this is an area that should be explored further, or is it something we all feel that this is not worth our time to explore? I'm open to suggestions.
Are you specifically talking about the
The personal property, I mean, to understand whether we've got everybody captured that we should,
I mean, it sounded like they did a lot of letters this time to try to address that.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe at some point, or I mean, it would be good to understand, you know, how many are in the assessor's on the assessor's radar screen, how many businesses should be paying their personal, you know, is it a pool of 25 businesses in town that are large enough that have, you know, the more than $5,000 threshold that should be and are paying their personal property tax, I guess, if that's what we would know. So people paying that tax, though, that would be a tax bill. Once they get that form from the assessors, though, they pay it to the treasurer's office? Where do they pay it to?
What do they pay what to?
Their personal property tax.
Oh, that's paid to my office, but not,
It is.
yeah, so the form of list, the assessor's office take the form of list and enter whatever is on that form in their system. And that their vision software ends up determining, you know, how much based on the equipment that business owns, how much that personal property tax will be. So that's just
Okay.
a file that comes through with the real estate taxes into my system. So personal property and real estate, and I bill for personal property and collect it. And they create that bill basically in the assessor's office.
So they're the ones initiating the letter that you've got something to pay, but then the actual payment comes into your office, and
I send the bill for personal
Oh, you
property.
do. Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
All
They
right.
just
So
send
then,
the form of list.
okay. All right. So could you just at some point let us know like how many personal property bills are sent out on an annual basis, or
Yeah, I can.
what we collect
You
for
know,
personal
right now.
property
Yeah.
bills? Yeah.
Mhm.
do you have a full dollar amount that we sent out last year to compare to this year, Jen, so we can see if it's increased at all? Because I know they were targeting a couple specific areas that hadn't been hit before.
Yeah, I definitely have the commitments from both years, so I can just send those.
That'd be great if you could.
'Cause
Yeah.
I feel like Janine and I were looking at that because there were some that actually went down substantially this year, and we were kind of wondering why. You know, why did they go down so much? Some of the big ones. So I can forward you the commitments for personal property for 21 and 22. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That will
Yeah.
show you everything.
Okay.
Is that,
And
that's calendar year or fiscal? That's
Yeah.
calendar,
Fiscal year.
fiscal year.
Yeah,
because we're still in
fiscal-
22, right? Or so it was.
yeah, fiscal
March
year
1st.
22.
Yeah.
But we already have it committed as to what we're going to collect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, and they should have paid these by the March 1st deadline. Is that what you're saying?
The
return
personal
form.
property taxes are billed quarterly, just like real estate.
Okay.
So they
March,
still pay
March
the-
1st was the deadline to return the form.
Yes.
Okay. Got
So
it.
if we got new ones, I wouldn't think they would have hit a quarterly bill yet, right? So we won't see the change to the last mailing that they did from the assessor's office if they just returned them by March 1st.
Yeah.
If it's a quarterly
Yeah.
bill.
Personal property is assessed as of January 1st, so that business
So it
would have
won't
had to have
change
been in
until-
place January 1st of 2021 to be on
Right.
fiscal year 22.
Mhm.
So anything new we sent out won't show up until next year.
Next year.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a delay, Chris. So
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's, if you could get us some of that information, Jen, that would be just helpful just to understand
Sure.
what we do have. Thanks. Okay. So those were, I think, basically the topics that we were trying to explore further. I guess I'm not sure that we're coming up with lots of actionable items where we're getting information, but I'm not sure that we've got something that we could apply and just say, okay, guys, we really recommend that we do X and change our practices here. We haven't talked about anything, you know, when we had our first meeting, we talked about all the services that we provide in town and what are ones that maybe we don't have that we want, or ones that we have that we might be able to offer to other towns. And I don't know whether the notion of dipping into regionalization of services makes any sense for for a future discussion. We don't have anything prepared for today, but where would you all like to head? Are we feeling like this committee is going to be making some headway here? I'm certainly hoping we can. I'm a little bit.
Can I make a suggestion before
Sure.
I have to go?
Yep.
So, and I don't know, you don't seem like you're too keen on fees, but
Oh, I don't think anybody said that. I think
We
they
didn't
just
really
know.
say
be
that.
made
but go
aware of
ahead.
the fee.
These are always a hard sell.
Yeah,
Fees
but go
are
ahead.
always a hard sell, yeah. So anyways, as far as motor vehicle excise demands in real estate demand bills, you're allowed to have a demand fee anywhere from $5 to $30. Ours right now we're 15. So we could put something on the town meeting to approve for that fee to be increased. So maybe increase it to $20 or $25. The water department charges a demand fee of $25 right now. So I guess that would make it consistent with that. But we send out, you know, with the, even just for motor vehicle commitment 1, we send out probably 600 demands. So even just an
Wow.
increase of $10, you know,
Yeah.
it's a big amount of revenue that could be earned. So that's a thought. So that would
Okay.
have to go to town meeting vote, I believe, right, Ed?
I don't know if it needs a town, I'll have to double check, see if
Yeah.
it needs a town meeting vote, or I believe it does, but I'll double check that.
Yeah, because we have
I don't-
yeah, and maybe we have that list of fees and so forth that may be part of one of our bylaws, so it might need to be a fee added to that after a town vote or something. I don't know. Possibly.
Oh, I don't think that fee is listed in, is that fee listed in the bylaws? I don't,
No, that one may not be. I don't know. I
don't
haven't
think
looked
it
at that in
is.
a long time, but there is a
Yeah.
bylaw about fees, I
Yeah.
believe.
Mhm.
I think there is, or maybe I'm confusing it with fines, which could be different. Those are different things, but anyway. Okay, that's a suggestion. Good, thanks. We can talk about that a little bit further. How
Chris,
about
and I think
any? Yeah,
I
go ahead.
wouldn't, I think we gave Jen the wrong impression. I don't think anybody's against fees.
No,
But I mean, I think it's, if Bradley interfaces with the assessors, have a discussion with them, or somebody have a discussion with them as to whether they had considered
yeah,
a late fee if they don't get the documents back in time.
and maybe they have, you know, maybe they get most of them back in time. I don't know, you know, it's just
Okay,
a thought.
yeah, no, that would be a follow-up question, I think, with the assessors, if we can check in with that, with Janine or April or whoever's available. That would be great. Okay. Any other further thoughts on this? Yeah, Janet.
I have another question. I mean, I know we've talked about policy changes in town, such as, you know, tracking photocopies made. I mean, little things that get really out of control can get out of
Right.
control. I mean, if that is something that can be done, I don't know where we stand with that, but if, you know, if we save money on photocopying and we can give people raises instead, I mean, I don't think anybody that works in town would say, okay, I'll make less copies, more money in my pocket. So, I
Right.
mean,
Yep.
I wish you could save that kind of money, but
Yep. Let me see if I had that document. Let me just see if I have that handy here. I don't know if I left it
I mean,
available.
maybe you don't have the equipment to do quite that
Uh,
tracking or not, but you could set up codes in the machines, and of course, you don't want everybody then doing them on the little
Oops, wrong
HP
one.
printers instead, so.
Right, yeah, wrong one. Just a second. Let me just see if I had that available here. This might have been from our first meeting where we had gone through the variety of services and so forth in town that we provide. I may not have that one handy, but there were things about shucks, I don't think I have that one handy. It's the wrong document here. Darn it. I don't know if I can find it handy offhand.
I'm not saying it's easy to do either. I'm just, you know, I mean, this,
Yeah,
you talked about some policy changes, and that's out of our
right.
grade level.
No, I know, and they didn't seem like they were terribly complicated policies. Here we go. Maybe if this is it. Let me just see if this is it. Hold on just a second, guys. I'm coming. If I can find it right here. I think this is the right one. Yeah, this was it, where we had talked about sort of the 4 buckets. So what would enhance revenue? That's what we've been trying to play on. I don't know, is there any further thought about looking into that aerial flyover subscription? I know we had talked last time whether that makes any sense, or why not just do Google Earth or whatever. So we kind of left that one hanging out there, I think.
When I asked April, she said the subscription she was asking for would provide views of all sides of the property, which would cut down on their need to go look and go out themselves. And she was saying that it would outweigh the costs, especially if other departments could utilize it.
Okay, well, maybe we could, if she could provide you with some information about, what that involves in terms of that subscription, and, we could look into it a little bit further for another meeting, just to understand it better. If that would be okay. All right. Potential cost savings, these are the ones that we've been talking about, and we haven't heard anything. We're still missing a little bit on centralized IT support because John isn't here. And then Ed, I don't know if you were going to check in with Eversource about the idea about replacing our streetlights, whether that would make any sense.
I actually have an energy contractor working on that right now.
Oh, very good. All right. So maybe for next meeting, we could learn a little bit more about that. And then
Hopefully.
I think, yeah,
Chris,
and Janet, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Just comment on I think Easthampton did that, and I just know on their Facebook page, the brightness of the lights compared to the other one, they got a lot of pushback on it, but
Yeah,
just to prep ourselves if we do go metro.
if we go that way, right?
The energy savings is about 50%. So you gotta look at that. You have to look at what it's going to cost to actually buy them out from Eversource, and then you also have to look at what it's going to cost, because then Eversource won't maintain them after we buy them out. We'd have to contract with like Holyoke Gas Electric or somebody like that to maintain them, and what they're going to charge per light or head or however they do it to maintain them every year for what your total dollar savings may be. But I mean, energy savings as far as like kilowatt hours or whatever, the difference is supposed to be LEDs run at about 50% of the usage that the current ones do.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, good. Well, hopefully you'll have some more information about that. We can talk about that at another meeting. I think, Janet, this is the bucket you were talking about here, is what can help with cost control. And we'd come up with four things. So using the purchase order system, we have a purchase order system apparently in place, but we're not really using it, if I'm understanding that right.
Well, I'd put it that we have a purchase order system that we can use, but we don't utilize it currently.
Okay. And is that a paper-based system, or is that?
No, it's a electronic portion of our financial software.
And why don't we use it, Ed? There may be a good reason, so.
I have no clue. We weren't using it when I got here, so.
Okay.
I have an idea that it was a cumbersome process.
Okay, but maybe I was gonna say maybe with a possible new financial software, that would be something that could be maybe a better option for us.
I really have to dig into what it entails to use the current one as compared to what it might in a new one.
Okay, yeah. Jen, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just thinking, I know that Heather had implemented it when Heather, the previous Boudreaux, that's the previous administrator when she was here. And it was, you had to do it for over a certain amount of money. I believe it was $500.
It was either 500 or 1,000.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a lot of paperwork involved.
Right. That's kind of the feedback I had gotten when I was talking to Vicky about it.
Yeah, so that's all.
Okay, so that's something to still investigate, whether that's something as part of some potential new financial software or some other thing, but that might be might be useful. But the other ones, reduce paper costs, photocopying, develop and improve vendor list, and the IT ticket support system. So I think we had mentioned that reduce paper cost was just, whatever, like Janet, you were suggesting putting in counters per department or something like that. Is that how that would normally run?
I mean, that's how it normally runs. I'm just saying it's an option if we want to control, how much. But
Mhm.
again, you don't want to push people to use their desktop printers instead, because that's a cost per copy that's much higher than,
Right,
the photocopier. So,
right. I mean, the basic thing would be to instill the notion, well, I think we already have the buy recycled, right, in terms of buy recycled paper, but photocopying double-sided should be, pretty routine rather than the exception.
and just cutting back on how much photocopying is done, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible. I don't work in town hall, so that may not be,
Mhm.
but you may, if it's time to replace the equipment soon, the
Yeah.
vendor would probably be happy to do a cost analysis or a
Mhm.
needs analysis.
And I'm assuming that with the existing, like the big copier we have in the break room, if it doesn't have a sorted out by department code or whatever now, that's not something you can just add on. It's got to be part of a new one that you would buy, or
I don't know about that particular one, but it usually comes standard and you can enable
Yeah.
it. And
I wouldn't be
assign-
surprised even if this one has it on it and
I
it
would
just
think.
was never implemented at the time. But we're in the process of replacing this one now anyway.
okay.
Can they do an analysis of the printing and copying in town hall while they're doing that or not? Or is it just,
I don't understand your analysis of printing and copying.
well, what's done where? How much is,
Well, we only have 2 copy machines, the
know,
general
but
one
what-
and the one in the accounting office. So
we have a lot of desktop printers.
we do.
That's part
So
of the-
how would one do that analysis, Janet? I mean, I know you used to work in the business, but
Well, yeah, I was not in the sales side necessarily, but technology wise. Yeah, I mean, most companies have groups that come in and do a paper flow analysis or workflow analysis and see how they can cut down on the most, unnecessary use of paper and filing. So it depends on the vendor that you're talking to and if it's something that they can do, or you can simply assign numbers when you exchange it so that you track by department how much photocopying is being done. And
That's the easiest way. That's the way I'm familiar with. They use the photocopier and they have to put in their code. So it gets charged to their account. So you can see what everyone's done at the end of the month.
And
okay.
you can set parameters, like you can only get X number of photocopy if you wanted to go this route. I'm not recommending one way or the other, but you can say this number only gets, 400 sheets a month. And then if they exceed that, I don't think their number works anymore, for example, but it just depends on if we can really save any cost on it or not. If it's not worth saving, a good amount of money, then you don't want to add aggravation to the day. But if it looks at it and somebody comes in and says, yeah, we could save a lot of money cutting back on how much wasteful photocopying we do, if we do it, I'm not saying we do it, but it might be worth just exploring. But again, if it becomes more aggravation than the savings is worth, then you don't want to obviously do something like that.
Yeah. So Ed, where are we in terms of the stages? Is it the one in the break room that you're looking at replacing, or?
Yes, it's really the only one we've got for general usage here.
Right. And you've already got a vendor looking at that? Is that what you said, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Ed, my
Yeah.
lease is up this summer, so I've got to look into one as well. So it's something we should probably collaborate on.
Sure. Sounds good.
Because typically you can get a lower cost per copy. I mean, you get more for your buck for your money when you upgrade. It just seems to work that way. I don't know if we buy or lease or
Release.
we lease. So, I mean, typically, even with the one upstairs, I don't know how old the one is in the county and how how it's working.
I believe that one might be, we bought, but we have a maintenance agreement on it.
Well, maybe it's worth checking at least with the library, Ed, and I don't know, to see if they have, what their photocopying situation is and whether they're ready to look at an upgrade or anything as well.
We can. I know Highway is probably ready to look at an upgrade also.
And
Yeah,
I'm sure with Ian's, I'm sure they'd be happy to buy out the contract and put in a new piece of equipment, but if you can do it for less money is obviously the key.
Our lease is up, so we're open at this point.
yeah. Okay, well, let's not do these one-offs. It sounds like there's some possible efficiencies that can be happening here for this this upgrade, or finding out what other departments may be in the same boat, that we just don't focus on the one at Town Hall, if we can broaden our horizon a little bit on that. So Ed, maybe could you find that out at, like, I don't know, your department head meeting or somewhere, or just talking to folks when you meet up with them?
That's an easy one to just talk about. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that'd be great. Because if we could get any kind of, efficiencies and cost savings on both the equipment itself, but also, having some, at least within Town Hall, having that level of departmental allocation, that might be, a good process to follow. The other one I think was on the approved vendor list. So we started talking about that a little bit, Bradley, when you mentioned the number of vendors. You rattled off 8 or 9 different vendors, I think, and that was all for things like toner and ink and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So is there still room to sort of narrow that vendor list down and have kind of the preferred vendor list? Does it make sense for us to think about having that be a policy of saying, okay, these are going to be the 3 vendors we're going to go to for whatever? And I know there's some state contracts involved in terms of certain supplies that get bought, but does that make a level of sense, or what kind of complications does that entail?
It may be just going to one vendor, and basically what you do is you take a look at your common, say 20 items, and then you take that and look at your state contracts or your vendors and say, okay, what is the cost for those 20 items?
Yeah.
20 most popular items. And is there one vendor that you're doing business with that is relatively cheaper on those 20 items? Doesn't have to be on all of them, but on most of those 20 items. And then you just say, okay, here's our top 20 items. If you're buying this item, you are buying it from this particular company and maybe under this particular state contract.
Mm-hmm.
And no, you don't go somewhere else.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily buying in bulk, but it's using, this would be different than buying in bulk. It would be just directing departments to use vendor X or vendor Y for particular things.
Correct. And it's, you might say you theoretically will save some money, but the other side of it is, whether it's Jen or myself or Judy or Ian, what you are trying to get away from is, when you're buying these type of items, is the person spending time going, oh, I got to get this. Is it cheaper from WB Mason, from, Quill, or, from Staples, and spending the time doing that research.
Right. Okay. Because you've already kind of pre-selected, if you will, the top vendors that you want to work with for item X. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, that one, it feels to me like what I'm hearing, that looks like that bears further exploration. And I think, Bradley, if you've got 4 or 5 responses, that's a start, but maybe we can come back around on that with further responses, and from other departments that haven't responded to you, if you could reach out to those guys again and see if there are items that are more common items that maybe we could have, half a dozen different items. Maybe we don't have 10, but maybe there's more than 2. Maybe there's more than paper and ink that would be common items across the board, that we could, maybe take a look at that further and see if we could explore that avenue. That looks like there's something there. It feels like there is.
But I feel we would just end up saying, okay, WB Mason and Amazon would be the only 2 vendors you can buy from because they're the cheapest. and that would be it. And so
Well, that's-
everyone would
I
buy
mean,
from Amazon.
So
Yeah.
I always buy from WB Mason or Quill, and we always look at which one would be the cheapest, and Quill is actually the cheapest a lot of the times compared to WB Mason. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
yeah, and again, I guess it would depend on, product though. I mean, you could say, okay, WB Mason for these kinds of products, Quill
Yeah.
for this particular product, Amazon for X or something like that. But like Ed said, to kind of compare it to the state contract price and understand if you really are getting a good deal or not. But even that level of kind of narrowing things down might be helpful. So it might save time too at the employee level, as Ed was saying, in terms of looking to say, okay, I got to buy something. Let me go do my quick cost comparison each time I have to buy it. Rather, that this is where you go all the time to buy item X.
Mhm.
Okay.
So when I worked for the city of Easthampton, they actually did central purchasing, but only for really common supplies like paper,
yeah.
staples, all of the paper clips, tape, like all of those items, and everyone went to the same closet to get their supplies.
Yeah.
But not for ink or,
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah. Right. And I think we're sort of talking similarly in terms of the
Mhm.
most common items, not the specialty items that,
Yeah.
Ian needs versus what you need, for example.
Mhm.
But, and the bulk purchasing may be tricky, as Ed has said, in terms of having storage space. So that ability to go in one place to everybody grab it out of one place may be tricky, but at least to say, you all can still order your own, but when you're ordering this is who we're going to go with for the town of Southampton to buy ink or paper or whatever it might be. So I think we need to explore that a little bit further. Okay. The last item here was the IT ticket support system. And I think, Ed, this would be something along with the tech, the tech policy stuff that you were talking about earlier, or maybe a simple one to institute going forward.
Yeah, and actually we do there is a system here. I just got to talk with Art about, it looks like there's a separate software system and a separate email you send your request to. So I'll have to talk to Art about how that actually worked. They weren't utilizing it when I got here, but it's another one of the items that I think Heather had introduced and then they had gotten away from.
Okay. All right. So we'll let you follow up on that one then. Okay. So that's where we are. So we've got some further follow up to do, a little bit on the property tax, personal property tax, certainly more on this, the vendor purchase, the approved vendor list, a little bit more on the potential of photocopier purchase, common contracts with HVAC and boilers. So there is a bit more digging that can be done in those for those that have got those in their responsible areas. The other topic we haven't talked about, and I think we ought to bring up at some point, and it's probably sooner rather than later, is something about any kind of regionalized services. Is there anything out there that we should be looking at with other towns where we can offer a service that we have, that a neighboring, obviously it's got to be a neighboring town. So it may not be something that we have that we could offer to Easthampton because they probably have much more stuff than we do, but maybe it's, I don't know, Montgomery or Huntington or Westhampton or somebody closer by that we might have something that we could offer them and get some revenue that way or whatever. So I'd kind of like to have a little bit of brainstorming for our next meeting, a little bit talking about possible regionalization. But other than that, I don't have a particular set of agenda items here to lead us forward. If anybody's got some clues, we're all kind of going forward, trying to see if we can make any headway here. And again, our hope was trying to see if we had some kind of easier things that we could institute for the coming fiscal year. And if we had to put forth some recommendations to FinCom or Select Board that this would be, over this next month or two, that this would be when we would want to do that. So does anybody have any final thoughts? And if not, I'd like to suggest that we schedule another meeting. I know that for Bob in particular, Thursdays don't work, and he's asking if we could do a Wednesday meeting that would be preferable to him, so that he could actually attend these meetings more regularly. And I'm thinking I had asked Lisa if she had any better time, if evenings were better. I don't know. And I think most people are kind of booked with a lot of evening things already. If the afternoon meetings still are okay, could we aim at another one? Maybe, I don't know, another Wednesday is March 30th, for example. Is that doable? That's about 2.5 weeks or thereabouts from now. 23rd might be a little quick. I don't know what you all think about that.
March 30th looks good for me.
The
Looks good
30th.
to me. Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
make that work.
Okay, let's see if we can do that and do some real digging and take a look at that, that form that I had handed out as a possible template to do some analysis, so that we're saying, okay, what are we doing now? How are we doing it? Let me get rid of this particular thing. And I'll just remind you, it was in one of your packages way back when. I called it a score sheet for lack of anything better, but what is the level of cost savings? What departments would be involved if we did, whatever the topic is? What is the current cost? What would be the estimated cost? And what do we have to do, either from a time or contractual point of view, to make some of this happen? That would be one thought. Again, for anything that's a service thing, what happens now? How would this improve it? Well, how would residents know that we're doing better in terms of services? So that would be a different kind of one. Improve public access and feasibility to implement. So these are the things that we had, I had thrown out as ideas just to get us thinking about, what do we have to do to make this happen? And does it make sense? These were the lenses through which we were going to try and analyze the solutions we were coming up with here. So, how feasible is it to implement some of this stuff? Who's really in charge of doing it? What other resources do we need to make it happen? So these things I would just, I could send this back around again, but I'm thinking everybody has it. But at least if you want to use something else, that's fine. But I think we need some level of documentation to say, if we're coming up with some recommendations, this is the kind of information we need to show to kind of make our case to whomever. At some point in time, we do need to report back to select board in terms of what the cost efficiencies committee is trying to do, and what we've been trying to find in terms of levels of revenue and or efficiencies. So any further thoughts on this?
I guess
Well,
my,
the positive end of it. Oh, go ahead, Judith, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say benchmarking against other similar like communities and what, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do that, but I mean, I'll try to take a look at some things, but
Okay.
to see how their revenues are different than our revenues and
Okay.
something they're doing differently for operationally. I don't know,
Okay. Yeah. No, if anybody has any ideas or contacts on how to get that information, that would be great. Yeah. Ian?
I think the key here is just generating more revenue. A positive end of this, if we can't come up with something that is sufficiently cost saving, then that means we're doing our job being cost efficient.
Yeah, to a certain
And
extent.
I think over the several years of the difficulties with the budget has forced department heads to be as efficient as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're at that point. Maybe we're at that place right now where we have to start thinking about revenue versus cost efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, because I think, and if we go back to that early list we did the first meeting of, what are the things that we would like to do, but we can't afford. We've talked about a variety of, some part-time additional positions to help out with various things, and how do we pay for them?
Right.
So that's the challenge.
Right.
So that's where we were trying to squeeze the lemon here to see if we had any bit left that we could deal with. But yeah, and there may be
we'll
a few
make lemonade
dollars
out of it, right?
Yeah, right. We can try. All right, guys. Well, thanks for that. And we'll let us adjourn, I think, if somebody would like to make a motion for that.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Yes, aye.
All right. Aye. All right. Let us call it adjourned at around 4:50. And thanks, guys, for coming and sharing your brain power. I wish I had some further brilliant thoughts to lead us through the wilderness here, but I'm not sure that I have any right now, but maybe we'll all come up with something collectively next meeting.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.